Real fun.
Really? You sleeping with her was an accident? Yes. Hey, okay. All right, okay. Ow. Oh, okay. Accident. Accident.
Hey, what's going on here? A lot of women are punching men around in today's movies, and the men are taking it. At first glance, it would seem that sex roles are changing in Hollywood films, but are they? Changing sex roles is the subject we'll be exploring on this special edition of Sneak Previews. Two critics talking about the movies. Across the aisle from me, Roger Ebert, film critic of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And across the aisle from me is Gene Siskel, film critic for the Chicago Tribune. Well, for decades, Hollywood's portrayal of men, women, and romance pretty much followed the same old traditional lines. In general, the men were brave, strong, and in charge of things. And the women were submissive, soft, what we used to call feminine. But in the past few years, Hollywood has turned the tables, and now we're seeing sensitive, insecure men with problems, and women who are tough and almost macho. The old sex stereotypes seem to have been reversed. This special program will look at sex roles in today's movies, how they've changed, why they've changed, and how deep the changes really go. And now Gene starts with Hollywood's changing portrayal of men.
Men are showing a lot more emotion in the movies today. If tight-lipped Gary Cooper and cavalier Clark Gable were the models of male movie behavior in the past, today the more typical male portrayal is something like the blubbering Michael Murphy character in An Unmarried Woman, crying openly on a New York street. After his wife, played by Jill Clayburgh, rambles on about her girlfriends, Murphy confesses he's been having an affair.
I love our meetings. They're so, you know, just love them. Sort of like a continuing story, you know. It's part Mary Hartman and part Ingmar Bergman. I love the women. Marty. Marty, come on. What is it, honey? What's the matter? What is it? What? Tell me.
I'm in love with somebody else. I'm seeing another woman for over a year. At first, you know, I thought it was just a thing, but it isn't. I love her. I want to live with her. Oh, God, I don't want to hurt you. I want to hurt Patty. But
Now that's a surprising new image in the movies, a man crying in public. Another important example of changing male behavior in the movies is Burt Reynolds' role as a hesitant, insecure, recently divorced guy with a very bruised psyche in the movie Starting Over. Here he is in Jill Clayburgh's apartment. Jill Clayburgh playing another unmarried woman here. As you watch this scene, try to imagine Gary Cooper or Clark Gable saying Burt Reynolds' lines.
I got a job.
Really?
Yeah, I'm going to teach this course at a junior college, and it looks... Do you mind if we talk about you and me?
Oh, please do.
I don't know how to put this without coming straight out with it.
I wish you would.
Well, I've got two things that I've just got to get off my mind tonight. One is I'm very nervous about teaching this class for the first time.
Why am I so sure that number 2 is the killer?
I want to have sex with you.
Gulp. I don't like the way you put that. It makes me feel very strange.
I know, it did sound a little bit like Tarzan. It's just that I was trying to avoid the whole romantic thing.
I don't like that either. I hate that. But can't you just personalize it a little? I want to have sex with you, Marilyn.
I want to have sex with you. Marilyn.
A slightly hesitant Burt Reynolds. And what we have here is, again, men showing a lot more emotion than they used to. Men who are not always in control of themselves, or certainly their women. Now, why is this happening? I think the key reasons for Hollywood's change is that it has become admirable in society these days for men to be sensitive and compassionate and maybe a little more unsure of themselves. And so, in order to connect with today's movie-going audience, Hollywood movie characters must exhibit those same traits that are admirable in real life. That's a standard way for movies to get us to care about and identify with characters.
You know where you stand right at the beginning of these films. They always give you some kind of little business or shtick for the male characters to do. Seems like they always have hobbies. You can see the screenwriters thinking these up. The guy is in the garden, or he's a master chef, or he has cats or model trains or something. Guys in movies used to have guns in their hands. Now they have wooden spoons, you know? But they kind of go against type. They always cast. They don't cast that kind of a person. They take a Clint Eastwood or a Burt Reynolds, somebody like that, and then they give him these things to do. So it always seems you have that tension because they seem to be playing against type, as Burt Reynolds was.
And more than the hobbies, they're halting in front of women as the films open. And again, the reason this is done, movie characters, if they're going to start out and get you hooked for a whole picture, you're going to have some kind of identification with the character or admiration of the character. Years ago with Gable and John Wayne, you felt comfortable and sort of admiring, and they were in control. Today you show an in-control kind of character, and suddenly people think that he's standoffish, he's bold, brazen. It's not the same reaction.
You get a macho guy like that, and the audience engages in dime store psychoanalysis. He's compensating, he's hiding something, you know.
So they have to hook in with this vulnerable character. That gets us hooked into the story, that gets the identification, that gets the story rolling.
Well, you know, the men are not the only ones who have changed. Hollywood's women characters have changed too, and basically what it comes down to is that they're saying no a whole lot more often these days. In the old days, when a woman said no in a movie, the odds were she was referring to only one thing, sex. But it's not like that anymore. In the new movies, women characters are beginning to say no to all sorts of things, like the roles they're expected to perform in life, the traditional duties and responsibilities they used to accept without question. For example, here's Meryl Streep in Kramer versus Kramer, walking out very matter-of-factly on her little boy and her husband, Dustin Hoffman.
Listen, I got to get those photos from the retoucher by tomorrow morning, okay?
I'm leaving you.
Honey, please. I can't hear. What? Okay, you too. Thanks a lot. See you tomorrow. You guys eat?
Ted, I'm leaving you. Ted. Keys. Here are my keys.
Here's my American Express card. Here's my Bloomingdale's credit card.
Here's my checkbook. I've taken $2,000 out of our savings account because that's what I had in the bank when we first got married.
Was this some kind of joke? Well, I'm sorry that I was late, but I was busy making a living, all right? Come on, okay? Can we stop now?
So, that's everything.
Well, that's everything, all right. She's walking out on her husband, her son, her home. She's walking out on her whole lifestyle. In another movie, The Seduction of Joe Tynan, we have another case of a woman saying no to her husband's expectations. Here's Alan Alda as a United States Senator and Barbara Harris as his wife of many years, who's finally launched a career of her own.
What do you think about living in Washington?
You mean move there?
I think I need you down there.
You know, I wanted to move to Washington when you first got elected, and you said to stay here so that we could have the weekends to ourselves.
Yeah, well, now I don't have weekends anymore. I have to lecture.
You have to lecture.
Well, do you think we can live on what I make as a senator?
And what about my work?
Well, isn't there a psychoanalytic institute in Washington?
Well, I guess there is, but the one that's accepted me is in New York. And the man I work with, the man who's brought me along to the point where I am now, is also in New York. I don't just work in a building, Joe. There are people there who mean something to me. Sure. Really?
20 years ago, it would have been unthinkable for a senator's wife to put her life ahead of his career, especially in the movies. Even more unthinkable would have been the whole crop of new movies that show tough, independent women just taking over for men and running the show. We've had Faye Dunaway in Network, Jane Fonda in The China Syndrome, Sally Field and Norma Ray, Barbra Streisand in The Main Event, and here is Streisand as the manager, trainer, and agent of a washed-up boxer played by Ryan O'Neal. She's trying to convince a fight promoter to give him a chance.
Yeah, well, I think we can make a lot of money off this fight, Leo. I mean, everybody's looking for the great white hope, right? Well, the kid's not so great and there's not much hope, but look what's left. Blonde, blue-eyed, I mean, good teeth. Semi-attractive. I think we can broaden our audience. I think we can bring more women into the fights. They'll all come, maybe even with their husbands. We'll shorten his shorts. I'll show more leg. Listen, I'm good at this, Leo. You gotta give me a chance. In the perfume business, I was an expert at making something out of nothing.
Mr. Goff, may I speak to my manager for a minute, please?
Be my guest if you think you can get a word in.
So, do you like it, Leo?
I think it has possibilities. Hillary. You two are you're very cute together.
Hillary.
What?
Can I see you for a second?
What? What is it?
Get over here, Red.
So talk. I mean, I'm a little busy talking to Mr. Goff. Okay. Gee, you don't have to be so violent. Bully.
I don't know when, and I don't know where, but I'm going to get you.
Is that a threat?
What do you think I am? A piece of meat? One of your perfumes? You treat me like an object. What do you think I am, a girl? No, I am a person. I have feelings. I'm a man.
I know. Didn't you hear me call you a gladiator? Hey, kid, don't be so negative about yourself.
I'm not negative about me, just you.
You think I want to be tied to you for the rest of my life? We're going to make our money, and then you and me is up and out.
That's a real switcheroo.
Yeah.
You have the woman wisecracking about how she's going to market the guy as a sex object. All three of these women, Meryl Streep in Kramer versus Kramer, Barbara Harris in The Seduction of Joe Tynan, and Barbra Streisand in The Main Event, are taking positions and making choices that women in the movies have rarely ever made before. What's amazing here is how readily their behavior is accepted by movie audiences. Maybe it tells us something about the changes that are taking place in our society.
I don't think there's any maybe about it. I think that's exactly it. Just like with the men, to hook into today's movie-going audience, you have to show, the movie character has to show that they know what's been going on in the past 10 years in changing relationships. The women have to be independent, otherwise we don't buy them and we don't care to follow them through for the whole 2 hours. Now, a lot of people are probably listening and saying, hey, you guys forgot about something. This is not the first time we've had strong women in the movies, and of course it's not. There's been Katharine Hepburn, Betty Davis, Joan Crawford years ago. This is really the second emergence of strong women in the movies.
You know, I think you're right, this second emergence that's come along now probably reflects a changing basic idea in our society about the role of women. But the first emergence in the late 30s and through to the end of World War II, that was just good drama at that time. Katharine Hepburn, we always think of her. And then when the war came along, America had to gear up and fight that war and send all the men overseas to fight it. The women were left at home. They were needed in the factories, the assembly lines, the offices. Hollywood pitched in and created that strong, reliant woman symbol because the war needed it. We had Rosie the Riveter, you know, working for the national defense. The funny thing is, when the war was over and the guys came home and got married and the women went back into their homes and started their families, Hollywood went right back to square one, put the woman back in her home. We had another 25 years of mindless sex symbols as if the decade from 37 to 46 had never taken place. It's very strange.
Yeah, now, based on what we've been saying, it would be easy to assume that what we've been talking about is a total revolution in the way men and women are portrayed in the movies. It would be nice to say that, but a closer look shows that the changes that we're talking about in the new generation of movie characters is often merely superficial. Yes, the men break down. Yes, the women are strong, especially in the beginning of the movies. Yes, they give us an early sign that they're modern characters. But at the end of these films, what happens? Well, often enough, time after time, we get traditional male-dominated relationships and an old-time Hollywood ending. Back to the status quo with a comfortable sigh of relief. For example, take a look at this scene in All That Jazz with dancer Anne Reinking. She's gotten a job with a touring company, and she asks her lover, Roy Scheider, if he thinks she should leave him and go on the road.
I love you, Katie, but I think you have to do what's best for you.
Just what do you mean, Joe?
I mean, for your sake, I think you should go.
Now, she seems pretty independent there, doesn't she? But hang on, just a few minutes later, in the same scene, watch what happens.
Softly and with feeling. Don't go. Please.
Now that's the kind of switch we're talking about, only usually you have to wait till the end of the movie before you get it. In this case, her independence is only a temporary affliction. Another example of this sexual turnabout is the movie Middle-Aged Crazy, with Bruce Dern playing a building contractor who goes through a midlife crisis on his 40th birthday. His wife, Anne Margaret, has had a one-night stand after he has spent the whole movie practically on a rejuvenation binge with a Dallas cheerleader. But here, at the end of the film, their relationship is back to Hollywood normal.
He's middle-aged crazy, trying to prove he still can.
Hi. What are you doing?
Just sitting here in the hot tub.
You look a little crazy, Bobby.
Guess I am a little crazy. Got hot water shooting up my... I got it all. Almost.
If you mean about last night,
Oh, that was last night.
where it was.
It doesn't matter where you were. All that matters is that you're home now. If you are.
I don't know. You want me to be?
I never knew how much.
But last night,
That was last night. All I know is that I love you now.
are you sure you're not drunk or something?
I am drunk. And something crazy. Well, look at me. I'm standing in this with all my clothes on. I don't know if I'm going to be a granddaddy or not. I don't even know if I'm still in business. But I know one thing. I never loved you so much in my life as I love you right now.
Now, some more examples of this contrived, old-fashioned, lovey-dovey ending can be found after stormy beginnings in such movies as The Main Event, with Ryan O'Neal ultimately winning his bout with Barbra Streisand, Starting Over, with Jill Clayburgh submitting to the charms of Burt Reynolds, Honeysuckle Rose, with Diane Cannon accepting a womanizing Willie Nelson back into her arms, Smokey and the Bandit 2, with Sally Field snuggling up to Burt Reynolds after she's told him off in no uncertain terms, and The Last Married Couple in America, with Natalie Wood back in George Siegel's arms. She's thrown him out, but in the end, she takes him back into their house and into her heart. Now, the message that the women in these films seem to be sending is, okay, men, show us in the beginning your vulnerable side. Show us you're not just another routine macho dude. And then, having done that, near the end of the picture, you can pretty much do whatever you want. We'll still accept you. So it seems to me the sexual revolution has not really been completely won in Hollywood. Rather, women are saying, we have met the enemy, we still kind of love him.
Do you know what I think is going on here? I think there's a powerful conservative impulse on the part of audiences, screenwriters, directors, actors, and everybody else in the movie industry
Maybe so.
to have a happy ending. I think there are happy endings for a reason. You can have the liberated woman, you can have the new man, you can go through all these wonderful situations out of the pages of Psychology Today, but at the ending, there's a real impulse on the part of everybody to make them into a couple and to somehow make it all okay.
It's certainly the commercial ending. It's safer. It doesn't challenge an audience. As a moviegoer, I'd rather have the challenge. At least on balance, I'd rather have more challenges than we're getting now. Right now, it's weighted way over to the together happy ending. I'd rather have the kind of ending where the couple squares off and faces each other in the eye and makes different decisions about each other. Not always hug and kiss.
You know, people say, well, why can't there be a happy ending? Aren't there happy endings in real life? Well, I suppose there are some happy endings in real life.
Plenty, yeah.
But if the happy ending comes at the end of a movie, somehow you see it as a solution. It's almost generic. It belongs there in the last 5 minutes. There are all kinds of conventions. We know what kind of music to expect, what kind of shots to expect. It almost, if you've had a very good movie, it almost kind of puts down what went before because you've had all these complexities and everything. The characters have been complex, and then suddenly they're forced into this formula.
An example of the kind of film that I think maybe we're talking about we'd rather see, at least once in a while or more often, is Kramer versus Kramer, with that ending where they get together at the end, but they're independent.
Kramer versus Kramer is a real good example because, stop to think, if they got together at the end and it was all happy and the music welled up, I think most people would walk out of the theater feeling cheated. They would say, well, that didn't come out of that movie. Another one is the Scenes from a Marriage, the Ingmar Bergman film, where the couple gets together, they talk, they share life experiences, and then they part.
They actually make an agreement at the end of that picture. I'll love you in my imperfect way, and backwards and forwards. And that imperfect quality seems more real and fresh and challenging.
So you have a few movies like that. You have a lot of movies that aren't like that. You take what you can get. Despite superficial changes, there are still some traditional sex stereotypes that do prevail in Hollywood, and proof of that is the continued existence of an official national sex goddess. American culture still does seem to require one woman in every few years to play the role of our traditional sex symbol. And one of the strange things is, usually is just one woman, as if we can only fashion one collective national fantasy at a time. In the last 20 years, we've gone through Marilyn Monroe, Raquel Welch, Farrah Fawcett, to name a few. And now, on the basis of only one motion picture, several dozen magazine covers, and countless thousands of posters, our current national obsession is named Bo Derek. Here's the movie where it all began, with Dudley Moore spotting her sunbathing in the comedy Tin.
I think I'll go out and get a surfboard. Damn! Damn! Ow!
Okay, now what does Bo Derek have to set her aside from all the other contenders for the crown of official national sex symbol? Well, basically what she has is a consensus. Like it or not, she's this year's sex symbol, tanned and free, running forever out of the sunset and down the beach in slow motion toward Dudley Moore, who represents for the purposes of this discussion our aging, insecure, forever hopeful national libido. Before we leave the sex symbol sweepstakes, however, we ought to take a look at the current sex symbols of younger moviegoers. Half of the total movie audience is under 20, and believe it or not, Bo Derek is almost old enough to be the mother of some of these kids who idolize the two currently reigning adolescent sex symbols, Brooke Shields and Christopher Atkins. They're innocent young teenagers who discover the mysteries of love in last summer's big hit, The Blue Lagoon. Brooke Shields and Christopher Atkins in The Blue Lagoon. And basically, that's just Annette Funicello and Frankie Avalon with their clothes off swimming around in the surf. Some things never change.
I think you're right. What have we learned in this investigation of sex symbols? Well, number one, in the beginnings of pictures, some rather dramatic changes. The women are acting much more aggressively, the men are acting much more timidly, and with much more confusion about themselves. That's all to hook into the audience and say, we know what's been going on in the last 10 years.
Right.
Toward the end.
But then at the end, what you have is the happy ending, locked in for the last 50 years of Hollywood, male-dominated, filled with cliches, oftentimes giving the lie to everything that went before.
That's what goes on at the end. Another thing that is staying the same is the sex symbol. We've got sex symbols for adults, Bo Derek, and as you pointed out, sex symbols for younger people. And that accounts really for the fact that so many young people are dominating the movie preferences of America. Now, although we've been arguing that the sexual role changes in Hollywood are only superficial, the superficial ones, we have to admit, are often quite entertaining. Women in the movies today, especially at the beginnings of pictures, are much more forward about sex than they have ever been, as this group of scenes from recent films reveals.
I think you're a turn on. I want you.
What?
I want you.
Do you often invite...
Do I often invite strange men to lunch? No, I do not. But it's not often that a strange man turns me on, or a strange woman.
I brought along a picnic basket and a bottle of Montrachet. And I won't take no for an answer.
Don't you drink?
Sure, I drink. But I thought we could go to my place and go to bed.
I'll tell you what. How about if I just go home with you and we go to bed together?
We could do that. Sure.
Now, just to make the point one more time, when you see those kind of sexually aggressive women in the movies, don't be fooled.
Right, because as we've said on all through this show, chances are they'll all end up marrying the guy and living happily ever after. And that's it for this week. Next time on Sneak Previews, we'll go back to reviewing 5 new movies, and until then, we'll see you at the movies.
Funding for Sneak Previews was provided by this station and by other public television stations.